Bobby Johnson. Well done, Manchester United.
It's a Sheringham, and Solskjaer has won it! And the Sar saved it! United again! Renee! A magnificent goal by Robin van
Persie. Hello and welcome to this week's redcafe.net podcast, United Hour, the number one podcast on all things Manchester United. I'm your host for today, Alex.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Ed.
Fantastic. Yes, so sorry everyone that it's been a little while since we've recorded. I know a few people have been asking why in the thread, but we're back now, and obviously we've got a hell of a lot to cover. And I know you'll all be dying for us to get to the furore that was this weekend's match against Newcastle United, a game of two halves, if ever there was one, a 3-2 victory in the end for United. But before we do that, before we dive into the fun, I think we need to set the scene a little bit and go back to what we've missed. So we'll try and do that quite quickly, and we'll whiz through it, no doubt. But obviously, it was a game that had a lot of attention around it, and we'll come to why that is shortly. But it's all been building up since we had those 3 wins after the Spurs defeat and the Brighton defeat. We had the Watford, Burnley, and any of you remember what the other one was? The other victory in that 3? Young boys, trust your old young boys. So we had those 3 wins. It looked like we were back on the bounce, and then we went on what can only be described as a somewhat drastic and dire run of results. So it started with a draw at home to Wolves. Not a bad side. I actually think Mourinho could be there in the not too distant future.
The Portuguese link, eh?
Mendes link, Portuguese link. They'll give him some money. No top clubs want him anymore, etc., etc. I definitely think it's an option. Maybe a downgrade for on Nuno right now, but nevertheless, there was the 1-1 draw with Wolves, and then the loss to Derby, getting knocked out of the League Cup, second year in a row that we've been knocked out to a Championship side, which is, incredibly disappointing, I would say. And I think for me, in both games, United maybe looked the least comfortable on the ball, which is disappointing. But after that, where the attention and the intensity on Mourinho's position really started was the West Ham game. So away at the Hammers, a team who'd struggled somewhat this season, off the back of a good draw with Chelsea, we went to Hammers and we lost 3-1. And I think, for me, and I think for a lot of people, this was maybe a point of recognition that perhaps Mourinho hasn't got the dressing room behind him. I don't know if you guys were the same. I don't know if that was a turning point for you.
I think, we had, I think it was Imran who was asking me in the WhatsApp, because we'd had quite a discussion about this. He's already decided weeks ago that it was the end of the line for Mourinho, whereas I'm still sticking in with him. And he was saying, look, are you on the bandwagon yet? And yeah, I will say that West Ham game was the time when I really started debating which side I was on. But to be honest, still wasn't really ready to say it's done and dusted. But yeah, it was the time when you start thinking, where can it go from here? Has he lost the dressing room? Some weird tactics, and we just now get a bit used to him just saying bizarre stuff in press conferences and whatever. So yeah, that was the day when you really started to question seriously. Still wasn't quite ready to throw in the towel, but yeah, it was definitely getting towards that way.
How about you, Ed?
I think I'm sort of a little bit less extreme than Imran, but I'm in the Mourinho out by the end of the season camp at this point, yeah.
But when was that? When was the turning point? When did the cogs really start spinning on that thread?
Probably Burnley.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So going back, the Burnley win.
Yeah, I just thought the way we attacked it just wasn't great. I just didn't think we played that well.
Okay, Fair enough. Everyone will have their own moments, and there'll still be some who haven't had that moment yet. And maybe that's Nick, and we'll find out what camp he's in after we get to the Newcastle game. But yeah, I think that's definitely a point worth noting, Nick, around the tactics from Mourinho. It was potentially, and we don't know this, maybe he genuinely thought McTominay was the right man for the job in a 3-man defence against West Ham, and then a 2-man defence when we were chasing the game. But it was just a lineup of strange decisions, and it's what Mourinho typically does when he's in this weird third season meltdown, and I do inverted speech marks for that. But following that, we had Valencia at home, and again a pretty uninspiring game, another draw, a 0-0 this time, and they just seemed like a complete lack of confidence from the team, particularly on the ball. There was no real momentum. There was no urgency, and for a Champions League game, at night under spotlights at Old Trafford, when you hear all this talk of the theatre of dreams and what a magical place that can be on a Champions League night, didn't seem that way, right?
No.
Yeah, and a pretty poor Valencia team this season as well.
Yeah.
That was days gone past, you wouldn't have even minded a 0-0 with Valencia. You would have said, okay, not the end of the world, but they've been pretty terrible so far this year, and almost you might even say we were lucky to come away with 0-0.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they had as much play as we did, really.
More.
But yeah, I mean,
the only difference was they didn't have the quality in the final third. They had far more chances than we did, far more clear chances.
I don't know if that's the difference, because it felt like we didn't have the quality in the final third either. It was another completely abject performance from Lukaku.
I think Lukaku needs to be dropped, but who do you drop him for?
Rashford, Martial, Sanchez.
Can any of those lead the line though? I mean, Lukaku can't at the moment, but can you trust those two?
I think he needs a rest. I think he's played a hell of a lot of football, and he's completely down on confidence.
Going back, actually, in fact, when we talk about that derby game in the Haribo Cup, I still find it bizarre that Mourinho plays players like Lukaku and other players like that in games like these.
Especially when we lose anyway, right?
Yeah.
Well, for me, I just don't get why he runs players into the ground, and he's done it for a couple of seasons now. Like, players like that should not be playing in these kind of games. And we not seen enough of the younger players. Fringe players should be given more chances in those kind of matches. And then you say, all right, fine, we had the reserves out and we lost. But that's the worst thing when you put out a pretty strong team and still lose. Then, that's why it becomes a much bigger fallout after the game.
100%. I think there was a fantastic point made on BT Sport afterwards. I can't remember if it was by Scholes or by Ferdinand or a combination of the two, but surrounding and around how Lukaku seems to be reacting to a ball being played at the moment, rather than making the runs for a midfielder to then play the ball to.
Yeah, there were some stats, weren't there, after that West Ham game about runs and sprints and how much our players are working, and it was something like, I think somebody had come on for West Ham and played about 20 minutes and had basically done more sprints than Lukaku in the whole match. It might have been,
Not even just him. I think it was a lot of our team, in fairness.
Exactly. But no, he's the one where you used to say for Lukaku, look, even if he's not finishing off the chances, he's still working hard for the team. He's still doing the running. So you kind of said, look, at least he makes up for it with teamwork. But then, in a game like that where you see there's nothing from him coming from at all, I mean, of course, you can blame other players. He's not getting the service, whatever. But that was the difference. I mean, in the last, we saw more from him, obviously, in the last game. But there was big question marks over where he's at. And I don't know if it's about him being tired from the World Cup, blah, blah, blah. Who knows?
Yeah, 100%. And I think this is another, we'll probably refer to the WhatsApp group a lot. And a quick plug, actually, for those of you who get donating on Patreon, you can join our fantastic WhatsApp group and get real-time insights from the podcast team watching a game and all big the frustration as it's happened. But I think on that WhatsApp thread, me and Ed, we were having a discussion, weren't we, around Lukaku and it being you were saying, why should he make the runs when no one plays him the ball, particularly when Dalot's not in the team and Valencia was back in for that Valencia game. Why bother making the runs if no one's playing the ball? And it's a fair point but it's a chicken and egg scenario, right? And
Yeah. I think you made the point that these all have their own job.
Well, fair play to Ed as well on Valencia, because on the last pod or the pod before where you were slagging him off, and I think the rest of us were quite surprised at how negative you've been. And
I was
since
with
then,
Ed, I must
it
say.
seems that I'm
I
pretty
was
sure
with
that
Ed.
Jose's been listening to the podcast because he's fallen way out of favour.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
100%.
called that way ahead of time. So yeah, fair play on that one.
I think a lot of people have been frustrated with Valencia for a long time. I think it was just that Ed said he was the worst player ever or something.
I didn't say he's the worst player ever. I said he's one of the worst players I've seen in a United shirt for a long while.
Sure. Which, I don't know. There's a lot of competition, even in his own position these days.
There's some big contenders for that prize.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that anyone's else isn't worse. It just means he's particularly bad.
Fair enough. And I think just on that point around chicken and egg with Lukaku, my argument is that you can only ever do your best and do what your job is. And if he's making the runs and not receiving the service, we can identify that as the issue. But when he's not running, I think it's hard for him to complain or for anyone to really make excuses for him. I guess just on that defeat, before we move on to what followed with Newcastle and some of the rumours about Mourinho, there was obviously Antonio Valencia liking an Instagram post which was saying Mourinho out.
Yeah, well, that's just because he doesn't speak English and obviously didn't even read what the hell the post was. It was just some picture of him, right?
Pictures of him.
And in fact, nowadays, I think half the players, I don't even know if they do run their own Instagrams and Twitters, whatever. They have some other guy who actually even deals with that stuff for them. So yeah, who knows?
I completely agree, but he was obviously dropped again at the weekend.
Storming a team cup though, I think better man management would have been, accepting the apology, fining him, and carrying on. Didn't have to drop him.
Yeah. But maybe he was dropped anyway because he hadn't played the game before. Maybe he is alternating Young and Valencia. Maybe Young and Valencia are the new Rashford and Martial combo from last season. Swapping out exciting youth for withering wingers who are old and now playing fullback. Who knows? But quickly, the other point on that game, I guess, is it makes what was already a hard group even more difficult, right? We've got back-to-back games against Juventus, and then if Valencia go ahead and smash Young Boys in their two fixtures, they may not. Who knows? We don't know, but it could put us in a very difficult position if we don't get a result against Juventus, which right now doesn't feel likely.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment it's early days to be saying that, and in fact, we have actually got the best record of all the English teams at the moment. However useless we've been, all the rest have already lost a game. Whereas, we've not even. So yeah, we had this out on our Twitter, right? We've not even conceded a goal in the Champions League. So yeah, that's the one thing we can hold on to at the moment. Not that we've been great at all, of course, and we've still got our two most difficult games to come back to back right now.
Yeah, but
yeah, look, I think after two matches, you're not going to worry too much just yet. Let's see where it goes now.
Straws and clutching, Nick, but
surely we should aspire to be the best team, not just the least worst. The best team in England, not just the least worst team in England.
Well, I don't. I'm not seriously championing this thing. It's
I know, but it's just.
I enjoyed your optimism, Nick. Let's move on. So, that brings us towards present day, I guess, and towards that Newcastle game, and obviously there was huge frustration after the West Ham game. That was coupled or encapsulated even further after what was a ball draw against Valencia, and on Friday night it came out, and I think it was David McDonnell, is it, from the Daily Mirror? So he's the lead football writer.
Yeah.
He posted the story that Mourinho would be fired after Sunday's game, whatever happened. And this is the lead football writer. It is Daily Mirror, and I appreciate that the Daily Mirror is a tabloid. And if this was transfer news, you wouldn't believe it. You would file it in the back pocket and maybe not even allowed to post it on Redcap and whatnot. But transfer rumours are one thing, but journalists do not post that a manager is going to get sacked without feeling that they have a very credible and solid source, and maybe even double sourcing it. Like it just doesn't happen because they're staking their own reputation on it, and they risk being banned from the club, which is what has ended up happening. This isn't a rumor that United are speaking to Zidane, or a rumor that he's heading out the door. This is a solid Mourinho's going whatever happens.
And I think he maintained his stance after the game as well.
And I think that might be, that's probably fair enough, because I guess, and I don't know if you guys agree, but the nature of the Newcastle result, not that we won, but the nature of the comeback made it almost impossible for the board to sack Mourinho, and that means that you can't invalidate the rumour purely because we haven't ended up sacking him. To me, it's just a case of, either he was misinformed or his source was misinformed, or that was the plan, but there was a bit of a rethink after the nature of the comeback, and maybe it's more a stay of execution than anything else. I don't know what your thoughts are, both of you.
It's all a bit of a weird situation, isn't it? And normally you'd say, why, if the club have decided to get rid of somebody, why are they even going to wait another game? But we did have a kind of situation with Van Gaal where there was kind of similar-ish stuff. Rumours came out. We had the FA Cup final, and then literally minutes after it finished.
And I think it was him, right? I believe that David McDonnell was one of the key people who broke the Moyes and Van Gaal story.
Well, that's why people gave it credence. And as well, like I say, stories had come out, and Gary Neville was very, very negative and disparaging about this situation, saying, why is this kind of stuff?
Shall I read the Neville quotes?
Yeah. Go
on. Okay, cool. So there's a lot here. Bear in mind, but it was an emotional rant from what is a passionate ex-Manchester United player. So if this is true and it's broken the day before it's going to happen, he's sacked after the game or over the weekend, then it's an absolute disgrace. What are the values and principles of Manchester United? He then moves on. Enough is enough for me. I love the football club. I absolutely love it to death. It's been my life. It's given me everything. And I'm not turning on my football club, but I have to say something has to change. It isn't the manager. It's above that. He goes on to say that the pinpoint, the start of all the problems was the sacking of Moyes, and at the moment it's the tail wagging the dog. The dressing room is leading what's happening, and we need to get some control back. And it was a bit of a weird rant from Neville in that he places sole blame, I think, on Woodward. He's completely backing Mourinho. He's also has no mention of the Glazers. Again, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with his assessment and his passion fury?
Well, I don't know if he was specifically talking about Woodward or what. He was just talking about whoever's in charge, right?
I don't know. I think it's quite clear it's Woodward. He's been critical of Woodward not backing Mourinho. It's quite clear that Woodward is in charge. He's the chief exec and he's the one making the decisions. I don't think from me there was any even an inkling of doubt that he's directing this at Woodward.
I think so, and I don't think it's just that they're considering sacking Mourinho. I think it's the fact that it's leaked to the press before it's happened.
Oh, 100%. That's where some of the fury comes. But
no, I think that's where all of the fury comes.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it, yeah.
So here you are, so a bit more. So to be honest with you, I'm furious. I'm furious going back 3 or 4 years when David Moyes was sacked. It broke the day before. Yes, as we've just said. You have to start looking at the people who appoint the managers, the people who are bringing in the players, the people who are sanctioning the deals, the people who are overspending on players, the people who are allowing the tail to wag the dog. And like I say, he goes on to say around how it all started with that sacking of Moyes and how we didn't back him throughout his contract, and the same again with Van Gaal and Mourinho.
I think there's a lot of truth to what he's saying. I'm not too sure about overspending on players. I think that's just the market at the moment. I don't want to see Mourinho sat like that. I think he deserves more respect. I think any manager deserves more respect. I find football weird in that it seems to be the only thing where it's allowed to sing about someone losing their job. I know there's lots of money involved, but it's still a man's life.
A 20 million payout, right?
Yeah, but it's still a man's.
Sure.
He's still waking up and eating his cereal in the morning with nothing to do for the rest of the day.
Well, it's all right.
I don't think that'd be for long.
I've got a bit of sympathy for it. That's all.
In a gold-plated bowl with a gold-plated spoon. I don't have that much sympathy.
This is a man who's poked opposition team staff in the eye, a manager who's called Wenger a specialist in failure. This is hardly a man of complete integrity and dignity.
True.
No, look, I mean, going back to the comments, I actually don't think that Neville is directly talking about Woodward. He's talking about the whole way the club is structured at the moment. He's talking about the whole goes into whether, the scouting system. And of course, Woodward's a big part of it. And even above him, there is, the Glazers. I don't know. There is nowadays more and more talk about that maybe one of them, Joel Glazer, is getting more and more involved in the club. Whereas historically, they didn't really do anything in the club. They just, left it to that time, obviously, Fergie and Gill, and had very little input. Whereas, I don't know, you do hear more and more stories now that maybe they are trying to get more involved because they see that things are not going in the right way. So then in that case, they do have to take some responsibility for the way things are going as well. But his main issue is, of course, how the club is conducting itself, that stories are coming out as well, that, in the summer where Mourinho starts making it obvious that he's not that happy about transfer targets, and then stories come out where obviously Woodward or whoever is briefing the press saying, but, we didn't really agree with those transfer targets. We never used to have this kind of thing. Like now we do hear stories from Fergie and Gill days that they fell out a lot. They didn't agree a lot. They would often had arguments over players, but nobody in the public knew about that at the time. To the public, they came forward with a united front and everything was kept very much in-house. Whereas now, we have this whole way that constantly people are briefing here, briefing there, stories are leaked to the press, and this is the big issue that Neville has. And for me, that's a massive issue as well. Like, it's an embarrassment for the club. And I don't like this at all, the way it's all going on, how things are played out. And Mourinho has to take a lot of responsibility for that as well. He can't, can't be, a lot of it's down to him. He starts a lot of these things, I think, himself. And then, I don't know whether it's Woodward or whoever feels they have to come back out. And it is a major issue, the whole way everything's structured. And, in the past, I've always been quite defensive of how the club is run and against people, who are quite anti the hierarchy and whatever. But lately there's been quite a mess, and there definitely needs to be some kind of change somewhere.
If I hadn't heard this thing about the Glazers getting more involved, surely if the owners are getting more involved, is that not an indictment on Ed Woodward's tenure as the CEO?
Well, I think that obviously anyone can see that money is not being spent wisely. We're not getting a return. There has been investment more than other clubs, and what are we seeing for it in the last few years? So I think they're obviously looking at that and thinking, maybe we need somebody else to be getting involved here, and maybe just, I assume they're thinking, let's leave Woodward to go back to what he used to do, which was the commercial side of things. And in fact, the commercial side is still doing well. I mean, United share price hit record highs only about a month or so ago. Regardless of what's going on.
Value at the club is something like 4 or 5 billion now.
Yeah, regardless of what's going on the pitch, that was a record high, and that's only in like weeks back.
Just to contest or add to a few of the points you've made there. So I wasn't aware of this potential increased involvement from the Glazers, but Woodward said multiple times in shareholder meetings and whatnot that he spoke about how expansive football doesn't necessarily equate to trophies or more success on field, and ultimately it doesn't equate to commercial success, and he's picked that point up constantly, and he's also that even trophy success doesn't. And to me, it feels very much that we are moving towards that Arsenal business model of, as long as we're hitting Champions League and we're making Champions League, and therefore continuing to have that ability for marketing sponsorships to bring the players in we need to bring in for those sponsorships, and also getting all the TV money, and whatever else. As long as we're doing that, then that's all that necessarily matters. Where there may, I don't know that there's any real care from up above about titles. I don't necessarily know or see that, and we of course don't know when we're speculating here. But one thing that we do know is that there has been a lot more talk around United getting a technical director, and it's something that we spoke about earlier on in the year, actually, before when it looked
last
like
season,
United were on track to finish second, we were saying this much earlier now. I think the majority of United fans would say that the issues at United are multifaceted. I don't think there are many United fans who would pin the sole blame on Mourinho, and I don't think there are many United fans who would pin the sole blame on Woodward. It's clearly a problem within the structure and a problem from a lot of places, but I'm a little bit concerned, and obviously we don't know, but this technical director is not a director of football, it's a technical director, and that in some ways is good in that it might bring some continuity. They might look at, as you were saying earlier, Nick, the scouting system, the youth academy, all that sort of thing, maybe potentially even the style, and they might act as a sounding board and advisory board to Woodward and the board on managerial choices, but they're not necessarily the person picking the players. And from what we know about Woodward and what we can gather from him, he seems like someone with quite a big ego, and often that's needed. But I don't see him giving away his power. I don't see him relinquishing this power he's now had of being able to pick the players who he's bringing in and decide who he's spending money on. I just don't see it.
Well, I don't either. And I think the director of football thing has rumbled on for however many years now, since Moyes was in.
Not really. It's only been a serious talk in the last year or so.
There's been rumours for years.
It's been mentioned, but I'd say I only really heard anything serious like starting last year.
They've definitely turned up the heat in the last year.
I just think it would have happened by now if it was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will happen. I'm just concerned.
I'm pretty sure it will happen, either this year or next minimum.
I'm just concerned that one, is it purely a placeholder, and is Woodward going to retain a lot of that power? I see there being frustrations and potential animosity between Woodward and that potential director when they come in, if that is the case. And then we've also got to get a manager who's on board with them, and Mourinho definitely won't be that man, I don't think.
No.
But yeah, just on the points around the briefing, Woodward clearly uses the newspapers to advantage. So does Mourinho. I think the reason that the club gave him that new contract a year ago was because Mourinho was backing him into a corner with daily articles that he was going to join PSG in the summer, right?
Yeah.
So again, as much as two wrongs don't make a right, I don't have greatest sympathy for him. And like you said, Nick, he deserves some of the blame as well. But anyway, obviously we went into this game on the back of those rumours. I think the club had come out on Saturday and said that they're behind him and whatnot, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite bizarre because I had a bet with a mate of mine about a month ago where maybe even, I think it might have even been 2 months ago after we had that kind of bad start to the season, and he was like, Mourinho will be gone by Christmas. So we've had a tenner bet that I said Mourinho will still be here by Christmas. So yeah, he was texting as soon as he heard that story in the morning saying, oh yeah, what are you going to pay me out today? Get ready. And then 2 hours later, the club are briefing back saying, no, we back him. So yeah, it's all a bit of a bizarre situation, really.
It's weird.
And then, like you say, we go into that game.
Is that something that they have to say and they say anyway or not? Or is it that I think there's some rumours, and it's probably not worth us spending any time on this, but there's some rumours that Mourinho put the initial story out on Friday himself just to force the club into a corner where they had to either publicly back him or sack him.
Yeah, who knows? And to be honest, those public backings are often, veiled final words, and the amount of times clubs have backed managers and they've been sacked a week later. But so it doesn't really mean that much in the end. Like you say, the club have to say something like that, but it doesn't mean anything.
100%. And I think one thing Neville did say is that as a result of that Old Trafford would be bouncing and they'd be backing Mourinho, and it seemed like they certainly were for this Newcastle game when the teams were coming out. There was a lot more banners than normal. There was potentially a bit more noise as well. Mourinho was also looking pretty playful, squirting water at the cameras. He seemed in quite a jovial mood. Maybe not 10 minutes later when Manchester United were 2-0 down.
Oh God!
Just one of the most dire starts that I can remember United having.
Against a team who don't score goals, who
And I think that and this has probably been said to death by pundits and commentators, but what does that say about United? That Newcastle, a team on 2 points, managed by Benitez, potentially one of the only managers more defensive than Mourinho, come out at Old Trafford attacking and pushing men forward, right? It's damning, right, that they felt that they could have success doing that.
I could only laugh when they scored the second goal because you just saw it coming.
Laugh or you'll cry.
Yeah, it's just, it's a pattern we've talked about again and again, that we concede one and then they just don't know what they're doing, and that second one goes in minutes later. Too many times. It's just, it's just like you say, you just have to laugh that it happens yet again after all these times, all these whatever. They still, to get that is just mental.
Both goals, it's just a case of complete lack of awareness, a lack of urgency, a lack of accountability. No one picking up their men, or when they do. So for the first goal, you've got Kennedy who puts it onto his left with a nice turn and some nice forward, but even so, Young should be closer to him and doing more. Just no urgency from him there, and he's bending in. The second goal, Shelvey's got the world of time on the ball, more time than we'll have to record this podcast before he puts that ball into the box. And then is it Mutu?
Who I don't think he'd scored a goal yet, had he?
Wasn't it his debut?
I think it might have been his first start. He has played, but I think it might have been his first start.
Yeah, first start. Yeah.
Either way, he gets the ball in the box. He manages to take 4 touches. He had even more time than Shelvey. He could have ran the pitch and back in the time he took to turn and smash it in. And again, I mean, we were near him, but how can you allow a player to have 4 touches in your box? It's just unbelievable, right?
Yeah, the second one was actually worse than the first. Like the first, you can actually say, it's a pretty good touch and finish. The second one is awful. That a player has that much time to turn and shoot is just really crazy. Yeah, But yeah, he goes back to just how he's started. And I don't know, we not even mentioned the fact that, he had kind of seemed to have favoured Lindelof over Bailly for a few weeks. Then all of a sudden, Lindelof's out, Bailly's back in.
Is he not just throwing shit at the wall at this stage and seeing what sticks, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know. And that's it. Fellaini seemed to have been doing pretty well as that kind of defensive midfielder. Then all of a sudden, he's on the bench.
McTominay's in a back three.
And not only that, he's saying McTominay is the best defensive option he's got. Like, I really want to defend Mourinho and get behind him, but some things are just very difficult to see the logic of.
And like clearly there's a massive lack of confidence from the likes of Bailly, who then got brought off 18 minutes into the game. And Mourinho hugged him, but even so, he's being hauled off the pitch that early into the game. And Bailly was our best defender in his first season under him, and last season, Mourinho seemed to lose trust. He spent the whole summer moaning that all his defenders were crap, and then now he wonders why none of them have any confidence and none of them can do anything and play without belief. And it's again hard to feel like he hasn't created a rod for his own back here, because as much as I've said that De Gea saved us quite a lot last season and our expected goals against us was higher than the goals we conceded thanks to De Gea, we still only conceded 1 goal more than City, right? And
yeah, that is the crazy thing. We had one of the best defences in the whole division, and I mean, all right, we were set up very defensively, and we complained about that all season.
But are we less so now?
Well, I don't know. I think this year he has been trying to be a bit more open.
Maybe against Spurs, that's it. We're not creating any more chances. We're not having any more shots. Our average positions aren't any further up the pitch. So if he's trying, he's failing, and yet we're getting the negatives and conceding a load of goals for it.
Yeah, I think we're something like 5th or 6th most goals conceded so far this year, and the ones below us are all your, Huddersfields and Cardiffs and whatever, which is crazy.
Clubs we should aspire to be. but yeah, anyway, we're 2-0 down, and I think at that point it was looking dark for Mourinho. Let's be honest, right?
Yeah, no, at half time, even me, I said, I don't really know where we can go from here. Although, you still had the hope. I mean, I know you were as well, Locker, looking at the odds for the comeback. And I remember looking at it at half time.
I think it was Ed who said he's convinced we'll get a win out of this game, right?
Yeah.
I said, fucking hell, we'll probably win, but for God's sake, they've not made it easy for themselves, have they? I did think we'd win, especially after the goal. But yeah,
I mean, I did look at the odds at half time, and it was only about 8-1, 9-1. I said, no, that's not enough to be putting money on. But I think you waited, didn't you, Locker? And you got
I did wait
20 odd to 1 or something.
So obviously we finished half time at 2-0 down. Matter had come on at 18 minutes. He definitely influenced the game and brought a bit of calmness back. A man who barely sees the light of day under Mourinho. It was like he unlocked a cupboard and let Mata out and unleash the chains. But obviously,
but the same thing happened last season, didn't he? He went totally out of favour. Wasn't even in match day squads, and then all of a sudden he was back in the team and kind of.
He's the ultra professional and comes on the pitch and does a fantastic job because that's what Mata and he's not like some of our other players, Downing Tools. He's there ready to go. But anyway, second half, obviously McTominay comes off. He'd struggled after being moved into the defensive position. Fellaini and no criticism of McTominay. I don't think he's really ready for a midfield role at United. I don't know if he ever will be. Never mind a role at centre back, considering all the extra pressure on that position at the moment. Fellaini comes on in his place and. It was a bit weird, right? We had the defensive three that everyone's been crying out for in Smalling, Matic, and Pogba. What we'd all been hoping for, right?
Well, I think my reaction was, how many do we think we're going to concede with Pogba in defence?
100%, and I think a lot of people probably felt the same. And I think a lot of the stories since has been that. Mourinho opened up to the players and asked their thoughts, and Pogba perhaps even suggested that he drop into a deeper role, right?
It is interesting, these stories that are coming out now, that, saying the players and Pogba specifically have been giving his input, and Mourinho's basically let them say, all right, you do what you want to do and let's see what happens.
At the same time, as much as, I think that the stories are typically being posted in to be a negative light of Mourinho. Oh, it wasn't even Mourinho's tactics that turned it around. It was the players. But ultimately, he's giving them that access and that ability, right? And letting them have a say and influence how they respond, which, you've got to praise. And it worked, I guess. Suddenly, we had someone on the ball, and Pogba, with a bit of time and space, can obviously do great things. And particularly him, from that back three, just seemed to completely change the game. Newcastle helped us out by dropping deeper and going into their shells, and if they'd kept attacking, maybe they would have got more out of it. And they almost did still get a third goal in that second half. But even so, like Pogba getting on the ball and being able to drive forward with it and play those 1-2s from a deeper position clearly helped. And so 68 minutes into the game, I think Sanchez was just coming onto the pitch for Rashford, who'd missed a header and had Mourinho shaking his head. I actually logged on Sky Bet to look at the odds for United to win and Sanchez to score. But when I saw that just United to win was now 20-1, I stuck only a mere £2.50 on it, but ended up coming in and getting £50 back, which I was very happy about. I'm not a good bettor. Don't let this make you think that I am. And I've no idea why I believe it could happen. But the fans were still cheering for Mourinho. They're chanting United and getting behind the team at 2-0 down. And this is something we see from the fans, right? I'm guessing you were there, Nick, in that Anfield game where we were 3-0 down under Moyes and you had the 20 times ringing around the stadium. It's kind of like a defense mechanism that we seem to have, right? Where we show a bit of pride.
Yeah, it has been like that for a few years now that, when we really go down, the fans, instead of booing or whatever, a lot of them just start singing louder and saying, yeah, well, fine, let's have a sing song and remind everybody about who we are. And yeah, there is still in the stadium a lot of support for Mourinho and the players. I don't know how long that will go on for. I mean, at the same time, like I say, there was boos at half time and after Valencia as well.
It was obviously a mix of the two, yeah. And obviously you've got 70,000 fans in there, right? So of course there's going to be a mix, and it's really hard to qualify percentages or anything like that.
Yeah, it very much depends on where you are in the stadium. I mean, like I say, when I'm sat there normally in the J stand singing section.
Top red section.
Yeah, and like over there, people do tend to just try and support the team, even if they're not happy. Whereas I've sometimes moved around, sat other places, and you hear more moans and groans, and not particularly booing, because in some of the other stands you just don't hear much noise at all. But yeah, people just not particularly supportive. Whereas there, people just say, yeah, fuck it, we're going to sing louder and just have a good day out if it's going downhill. And they said, yeah, maybe we'll go and watch the game in the concourse and have a beer instead of watching it at the pitch. Watch it on the telly in the concourse. I've seen that several times when things are not going too well. But yeah, look, in the end, everybody got their rewards.
Sure. 100%. So Matt kindly waited, right, for me to place my bet. He picked up a free kick. Sanchez was on the pitch at that point, but let Matt take it, which is obviously great, because I thought he might try and be the hero and want to take it himself. But Matt, who, I don't know if you guys know, but he's got the most goals from direct free kicks in the Premier League since he joined United. And or maybe even since he joined the Premier League, I think, himself in 2011. He's also got the best conversion rate. I think he just doesn't take enough of them.
No, he doesn't.
Probably because he's not on the pitch enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great free kick, right? What a free kick, and how needed was that goal?
Yeah,
it was crazy. Just at that time,
it's one of those games where if that goal doesn't come, you're never scoring. I'd say.
Yeah, and you're waiting. Yeah. If it comes much later, then maybe you think there's not enough time. It's just it's about 70th minute, and it was just the perfect time after Newcastle really been running, defending, that it's going to really hit them hard as well and give us that chance to come back. And we have seen we've had a couple of those comebacks last year as well from 2 down.
100%.
It's going to be Mata who dinks it, scores! And United have hope. Juan Mata with a wonderfully floated, wonderfully placed free kick, and with 20 minutes to go, 2-1.
Obviously, then you had the Martial goal. So a double 1-2 with Pogba, a really nice flick from Pogba. Martial driving on his right foot into the box, which is where he does best, and going for a near post finish this time, and a fantastic goal. And I think at that point, the crowd were, obviously really up for a ball. So Mourinho's showing some enthusiasm and emotion as well. And I think that, the players believed, right? That's one of the key differences. The players believed.
Sure, it's unfortunately the cross was deflected and actually quite helpful for Newcastle. Now, Martial. Pogba, back to Martial, worked it well. Martial! Brilliant! Oh, what a goal! United have pulled it back. 2-2, still 15 minutes to go, and Old Trafford is alight.
And obviously that then transcended into a winner through Sanchez, and obviously, again, probably being said to death right now, but it's somewhat ironic, or at least interesting, that the 3 goal scorers are Mata, Martial and Sanchez. Mata and Martial, players who barely seen any football under Mourinho in the last year, and then Sanchez, who's recently been dropped.
Sanchez needed to be dropped though, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm just saying it's the play, like a lot of people would be saying those 3 and Pogba, the players who Mourinho isn't necessarily giving his backing to right now, are the ones who've potentially, and we don't know, but got him out of jail, I guess.
Young with the cross. There's the header! Oh, it's a goal that could change the course of Manchester United season. Alexis Sanchez, it could change his United career. In the last minute, Manchester United have come from 2 down It feels like a hugely significant night at Old Trafford for the team, for the manager. Manchester United 3, Newcastle United 2.
He'd slagged off Martial again, hadn't he, the other day after one of the games where he'd said, "Oh, well, you've all been demanding that Martial play, and look, he's played now and he's done nothing or whatever." But then, he did still start him again. And I think Martial did actually have a decent game. Was it against Derby? There was a game he played pretty well. I think it was against Derby that he was one of the few brighter sparks in the match. And look, it goes back to the whole discussion we had last year. We're saying Martial was actually playing pretty well on the left, got shunted out the team when Sanchez came in. And in fact, there'd been a thread on Red Cafe saying, at what point do you really think everything started going downhill? With Mourinho, the first 2 years seemed kind of okay. And for me, I pinpoint that moment when Sanchez has been signed last, Christmas, January, as the real point where things started going in the wrong direction. I think, it disturbed the team, started becoming problems in the camp. He didn't perform. Martial then is a bit pissed off.
Pogba's annoyed that he's not the highest paid player.
Yeah. And, we had a bad end to the season, losing the FA Cup final, finishing. But, we were still relatively happy having finished second. And then everything just went totally tits up in the summer. And really, I go all the way back to when Sanchez was signed. That is the point where, for me, Mourinho's whole, everything got a bit derailed of moving forward. And now whether everything can get back on track or whatever, who knows? We'll see. People talk about this being the Mark Robbins moment for Sanchez, of course. But if anybody doesn't know, younger fans out there.
What's your gut telling you on that one, Nick? Could this be the Mark Robbins moment?
Yeah, well, it could be, but who knows? I would be surprised. I'll be surprised if it is. Let's say. But for short term, it is, because he's saved his job. That's, I guess, what people are talking about. Because back in those days, people thought Fergie were going to get sacked, and it was an FA Cup game where we looked like we were going out. Mark Robbins scores, and we went on from there. It was against Nottingham Forest back in 1990. So, that's why people are equating at the moment. But, it's a long way to go after that to see where we go from there.
We've had too many false dawns over the last 6 or 7 years for me.
Yeah. And we've obviously had these dramatic comebacks under Mourinho this year against both City and Crystal Palace, right? 2-0 down, winning 3-2 with a much improved second half performance. And yet we still turn out these dreadful first halves. Mourinho still doesn't know what his best team is. For me, he still doesn't have backing from all the players. And again, after the game, he's slagging some players off by name, Rashford and McTominay, saying that they're playing with fear and they're scared on the pitch and whatnot, which again, for me, is, it's this management by conflict that Mourinho's always done throughout his career, and it just doesn't work.
He hasn't done it throughout his career. It's like a recent-ish thing. He didn't used to do this when he first started. It's a thing that came in the last, he has done it for a few years now, but he never used to be like that.
I don't know. I think he has to some degree. Obviously, it's more noticeable now because maybe there's more people who aren't performing for him now than there once was. But I think he's always spoke about and been quite open that he manages that way. And obviously, he's got a tune playing out of Luke Shaw after calling him a fat bastard last year and whatnot. But like, for me, it just doesn't work anymore. Like that style players these days are more likely to need an arm around the shoulder and be told that they're God given belief rather than getting a reaction out of them. And he just doesn't seem to know who to give what treatment to.
A lot of weakness, too much weakness in something that should be beautiful. And as I was saying, I cope with it with some sadness, obviously, but I cope with it and I survive. I'm mature, I'm a big boy. But clearly some of the boys, Marcus Rashford was sad on the pitch. Scott McTominay was scared on the pitch. And even all the players, they commit mistakes that are not normal. I think at half time we had a good conversation We didn't promise to each other that we were going to win the match, because we cannot promise that. We promised to each other that we were going to give absolutely everything, without any fear, without any pressure, just the pressure of give everything. And of course, they gave everything, and I don't want to say we were lucky, because we fought so much for that. I think the boys, they deserve, but even if the result ends with a 2-2, even if you don't score the last goal, the feeling would be a positive feeling, because as I was saying, nobody can promise to win matches, but a professional should promise to give everything, and the boys, they gave.
Ed, who deserves the credit for the comeback? The players, Mourinho, both? Neither?
The players, I'd say.
Newcastle, Rafa?
I think the players.
Yeah.
Because after the game, Mourinho said, let's all promise to play the best we can possibly play. The players believed in themselves for a change, and they're the ones that turned it around, I'd say. That's not taking anything away from Mourinho, though, because like you said earlier, he gave them the option,
the platform
to do it. So perhaps that is why they reacted so well. That's good man management if that's sort of what happened in the dressing room at half time.
And do you think that clearly turned and such a drastic change in attitude from the players is that the Mourinho? So basically, I guess the question is, and the reason why this has arguably saved his job is that, does this suggest that Mourinho can still get a tune out of these players, or is this a case of players playing for personal pride? They're 2-0 down and is disaster, and their name, their pride, their whatnot is on the line here.
No, I think.
What are our thoughts?
I think it was in part from Mourinho. I think if it was a player for personal pride, they'd have done it 2-3 games ago when we were down.
So you think as Mourinho's motivated them and he can still get a tune out of these players, they aren't downing tools, they are still willing to play for him and try for him?
I think at the moment they are still willing to try and play for him. Yeah, I didn't think it after Valencia.
So you're Mourinho out. So a lot of people were Mourinho out because, like, I think Nick either is or would be at any point if he thinks that the dressing room's turned, whereas you're not really interested in whether the dressing room turned. You just think it's not good enough.
Yeah, I just think it's not good enough. I think he's run out of ideas.
Mm-hmm. And Nick, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, like you said, that for me is the big question. Are the players still with him?
And what do you think based on that second half? And the first half as well.
I think they still are. And this is the exact discussion I had. I think it was with Imran on the podcast a few weeks ago, and saying I did not see at that point that he's lost the dressing room.
But you did during West Ham, and you probably did during the first half, right? This is the thing.
During West Ham was when I first started actually questioning, has he? Maybe he has. Yeah. That was the first time I started thinking, actually, before that, I said, I don't see signs of that. We're not doing well. We're not getting results, but I still see players putting in the effort. I can still see some reaction from players. So I'm not seeing that yet. And that West Ham game was the first time I started questioning, maybe he has lost it.
So let me pose the question. If Mourinho got a tune and motivated the players for the second half against Newcastle and they're still with him, what is the cause of that West Ham performance and that first half against Newcastle? Just confidence?
Yeah, I think it's a run of confidence. There's obviously big issues in confidence in the defence.
Mm-hmm. That seeps through.
Again, like Mourinho has to take responsibility for that, because all the way back from the summer, he's been making it pretty clear that he doesn't think our defensive options are good enough. And he's said this time and time again. He's talked about, I've had to play an extra midfielder, whether it's Fellaini or McTominay, because to defend, protect them. And he's made it pretty obvious that, he doesn't rate many of the options we've got. And it's, chopping and changing here and there. I mean, even at the end of last year, his favourite option was Smalling and Jones. And I think if Jones had been fit, maybe he even would be playing now. And he's only just been forced to be going with either Lindelof or Bailly as last case scenario, really.
It's not just confidence, though. It's the selections. I don't understand why Fellaini's no longer in that sort of transitional role between the centre of defence and in midfield. He was playing really well in that position, and for some reason we've moved away from it. I just don't understand. And we've signed Fred. He's shown to be sort of a decent footballer actually. Plays for the team, tidy passes, gets forward, supports the attack and stuff. But then he's been relegated to the bench again. So there's no rhyme or reason to the way he's selecting the team for me.
Yeah, there is way too much changing from game to game. Systems, personnel. You're never going to get the kind of fluidity. And to be honest, it's something like I say we complained about before. Even when we were getting pretty decent results. It was something I still complained about last year, about how systems changed and things changed, and there was no way we were going to get any rhythm if he kept doing that. And when things are going badly, if you're changing that much, then it's even going to exacerbate those issues even more and make it even worse.
Yep, most definitely. And Mourinho's comments after the game. So obviously we touched on his thoughts on McTominay and Rashford, but at first he said it's not about me, it's not about any one person or one player, it's about the club, it's about Manchester United and that they've had this comeback. He then went into a 5-minute or whatever monologue word vomit mentioning the word manhunt 5, 6, 7 times and spoke about wickedness in the world of football. Any thoughts there? Have you got sympathy for Mourinho on that one?
No, because I think he brings it all on himself. And, these are the kind of issues on why right back at the beginning I said, I'm not sure if he's the right man for our club because exactly because of stuff like this. And, things he says in press conferences for me are a problem. And there's a lot of, it does not present the right front of what I think a Manchester United manager should be. But in a way, I've almost got used to it now. Like, it's just the way he is. Like, he does it every week. So you almost it's like just water off a duck's back now. Whereas although newspapers and whatever still sensationalize it all, now for me it's just Mourinho's doing his usual thing now again, and that's just what he's going to do every week, and it kind of just got used to it now.
Self-pitying, right? This week,
exactly.
And I think he said if it rains tomorrow in London, it's my fault.
Brexit.
If we have some difficulty with Brexit, it's my fault, and it's just this self-pity thing. But I think the thing that annoys me is that this week we win, and it's all about him and why. There's this conspiracy against him, but then last week when it's a loss to West Ham, it's that the players are shit. They've got a shit mentality. We don't have the quality in the build-up that, and he talks about this mentality thing and weak mentality and fragility and mental state and whatnot. But then the next week he's talking about a manhunt and it looks like he's completely paranoid. Just this complete wild contradiction for me. And
I do think, to be fair to Mourinho, that after those, rumours of these getting sacked anyway, whatever, that he did deserve to have a few snipes back at the press after that result.
I didn't take the comments regarding McTominay and Rashford in the way everyone else seems to have done. I think he was sort of defending him in that McTominay especially, he's been brought into a defensive position where there is a lot of pressure in that position to begin with.
He's put him in that position.
Well, I know he has, but at the same time, he's sort of saying, he's not ready mentally to be coming into that pressure.
Yeah, but then, that's his own fault. He shouldn't be playing in there. And he was talking him up as the greatest option 2 weeks ago. And as we've all said, exactly. Fellaini was performing really well in that position. And, the last match as well, before an international break, there's really no reason to be resting him or anything. So, it was I just think, there's no logic to that.
Oh, I agree completely. But I just don't think it was as much of a dig as people are making out.
So obviously he said that some of his players can't or seem to be struggling with this manhunt on him. Like they're struggling with the added pressure that there's talks of Mourinho going. And maybe that's true, but when Rashford's missing that chance, he's shaking his head and hauling him off. He's hauling McTominay off off at half time. So I don't think you can claim he's protecting them, especially when some of the worst performers are the likes of Lukaku and Matic, and he's not mentioning them by name, is he?
No.
He's mentioning the young kids who, need a bit of protecting. He's
Yeah, they're the untouchables, though, aren't they?
No, that's a
The
fair point.
untouchables of Lukaku, Matic.
And Matic has been terrible, but again,
He's been shocking.
as Mourinho ran him into the ground, he didn't get a rest all last season. This season he was injured and he was pushed back into the team as soon as possible. Clearly not ready. He's also getting on a bit, and
He's pulled out of international, hasn't he? He's saying he's got some injury.
Whether that's actually so he can have a rest or not, so they often drop out of friendlies and stuff, don't they?
Well, Shaw and Matic have already dropped out of the internationals. That's before a ball's even been kicked.
Yeah.
Let's see where we end up next week.
just to touch on it, because I completely forgot. Obviously, we spoke about Pogba's performance and turning the game a little bit from deep. So just quickly, rank for the Manchester United team in that game: first for touches, first for passes, second for chances created, first for shots, first for duels, second for recoveries, second for distance covered, and first for sprints. And particularly those last two aren't something that you would typically associate with Paul Pogba. And just the contrast from this game to his performance against Brighton and previous games where we've been behind, and he's maybe been a bit immature and tried to do it all himself, do the Steven Gerrard of being the hero and wanting to be the hero, shooting and playing Hollywood balls at every opportunity. Whereas in this game, he just brought a calmness and composure to things. At 2-0 down, at 2-1, at 2-2, at 3-2. He was driving us forward and bringing that urgency, but in a calm and measured manner. He wasn't forcing the issue, and I think Mata contributed to that as well. So just wanted to highlight those two and give credit to them. But yeah, so I mean that was the Newcastle game. Mourinho has kept his job. Who knows whether the plan was to get rid or not, but with the way that we come back, I think the fans would indeed have turned on Woodward if he'd got rid of that point, and maybe that shouldn't be the case, and that shows how fickle football is. But even so, I think the concern has to be though is our upcoming run. So if we look ahead, so the next 6 games or so we've got Chelsea away, and I think we all know how poor our form is at Stamford Bridge, and I'll let you guys touch on that in a bit more detail shortly. But we've got Chelsea away, Juventus at home, Everton at home, Bournemouth away. Bournemouth who battered Watford 4-0 this weekend, and have the front three in Joshua King, Callum Wilson, and I forgot the other lad's name, but who are outperforming Mane, Salah and Firmino at the moment. But after Bournemouth away, we've got Juventus away, and then Manchester City away at the Etihad. So, I mean, that's a tough run for anyone, right?
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we said at the start of the season, that although we've had a bad summer, at least we've got quite an easy start to the year that we can kind of roll into, and we've messed that up completely. So now, to have any chance of salvaging the season, we're going to have to pull out some big results in the big games. And to be fair to him, Mourinho did manage to do that last year. So but that's the only way he can salvage this season now, is by turning up in these big matches.
We did it in Van Gaal's season, right? After he had those 8 games without a win, 3 defeats in a row, we still stuck with him. And then we had that run in the season where we had like Tottenham, Liverpool, Manchester City, and we were smashing everyone in that period. Beat City like 4-2, had that Anfield game with Mata's overhead kick, and I think that maybe that wasn't the same. But anyway, in that season as well, we managed to turn around some incredibly poor form and then turn it around and have an amazing run against the top team. So maybe that's because players can motivate for themselves for the big games, like perhaps they can motivate themselves for a 2-0 at half time at Old Trafford. What do you think?
Yeah, there is part of that. I also do think that Mourinho is quite made for the big games. He likes to set
being the
up
underdog.
Yeah, exactly. Likes to be setting up as being the underdog, and struggles more when we should be dominating. So yeah,
I mean, even Bournemouth away, you'd probably and Everton at home, you'd probably back them to have more possession than us at this point. So you're right on that one, I think.
I mean, I said I expect us to win against Derby and Wolves when I was last on the pod, so I don't really want to commit to any sort of answer like that. But I'm hopeful.
Well, let's dive into it then, right? So first game back from the international break is a nice and tasty thigh-rubbing return for Mourinho at Stamford Bridge, and Sarri's Chelsea. This is one of you's done some research, I believe. I hope.
yeah, and we've actually got an awful record at Stamford Bridge.
Even under Fergie, right? We were
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do remember the odd decent win there, but
Mhm.
4 matches now. Last 4 matches at Stamford Bridge, we haven't even scored a goal. We've lost all of them. Last 3,
One of
we've
them
lost
was 4-0,
1-0,
right?
and it was 4-0 before that. So
It's the last time we scored when we drew 3-3 then?
Oh, 1-3-2, didn't we?
Oh.
Yeah, there was a cup match as well, and that I remember being at not too long ago.
Yeah.
Chicharito scoring late, and then it went, I think,
Mhm.
extra time and whatever. But yeah, I mean, in more recent times, as I say, 4 matches in a row we've lost at Stamford Bridge, not even scored a goal. I mean, we have won at Old Trafford, but yeah, at Chelsea, it's not been good. Of course, you get that story of Mourinho going back to Stamford Bridge. It doesn't have that same kind of needle as last year when it was Mourinho versus Conte, because they've obviously gone now to Sarri. And yeah, they've had a damn good start to the season, unbeaten.
Fantastic, right?
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea, they're a weird club, and they actually, as a club, they make me reassess what I think about how clubs should be running. All because, as you know, I'm somebody who wants to stick with a manager, give him every chance, and obviously it goes back to Fergie and everything. But I'm very reluctant to get rid of managers. But Chelsea chop and change; they change manager every 2 years, and they still seem to have success. It doesn't seem to kind of bother them.
It's like a double negative in a way. Like they're so far short term
Yeah.
that their players can now go from being like 4th, 5th, 6th one season to winning it the next.
Exactly.
Last season, where did they finish? 5th or 6th? Then the season before that, they won the title with Conte and had a fantastic year. They won like 12 in a row. The year before that, under Mourinho, they were again 6th or so. The year before Mourinho won, I think they were 3rd or 4th. The year before that, 4th. The year before that, 3rd. It's just unbelievable. But it's like the players now are just the most adaptive players. I mean, between them and Leicester, I'd say for going from complete shit to being best team in the league, it's just unbelievable how quickly they can adapt. And I don't think anyone expected them to be playing in a Sarri manner soon. But I guess going from Conte and being so restrictive last season, they've just had a lease of new life from Sarri, right?
Yeah, they've not even changed that many players. I mean, people talked about our transfer summer being disappointing. But in fact, Chelsea didn't make any more signings than we did. I mean, they had spent a lot of money on a goalie, but really they were only replacing Courtois, and their only real.
They had to.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like for like, really. And but yeah, I mean, their only major change was bringing in Jorginho, who he's bought with him from Napoli.
They did bring Kovacic on loan, who's been good for
he's
them
on
as
loan,
well.
but he's not playing every week, so he's kind of just a squad player at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jorginho is that big signing, and Kante's actually been moved slightly further forward now this year.
Yeah, it's
Jorginho is the one who's sitting in front of the defence. And even though they've switched more to 4 at the back rather than 5, they're still letting their fullbacks bomb on. I mean, Alonso is one of the top players in fantasy this year, isn't he? He's getting his goals, assists, and everything. In fact, Chelsea have got the 2 top players in fantasy football this year, Hazard and Alonso, the top scorers at the moment.
And Hazard have been fantastic, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's hitting 28. He should be hitting his peak anyway. But again, just having him, because in fairness, I've always criticised Hazard for being inconsistent, and he's had a couple of good seasons at Chelsea, a couple of great seasons, sorry, but also a couple of pretty horrendous ones. I think you could maybe accuse him of downing tools or cheating managers, and he just doesn't feel like he's ever reached his potential. He should be a 20 goal plus a season player, but he never has been.
Well, I think it was maybe about 3 years ago that people were saying, "Oh, Messi, Ronaldo, and then Hazard. And then,
Hazard,
like you
yeah.
say, he went then totally off the radar. But now he had a great World Cup. He's had a great start to the season.
Well, you could say he's never had an attacking manager at Chelsea, I guess.
Mhm.
Could you say that? You know,
Yeah,
who's he had? Benitez, Mourinho, Conte.
Yeah, true.
You know,
So yeah, he's a must-have at the moment.
for fantasy, yeah.
Yeah, although I've been dropping down the table after my great start to the season, but I'm still
Same,
the best of any of the
same.
podcast lot, I'll say.
I can't say I've logged in, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's it. So I see you like down in the relegation zone there, and embarrassing us all there, Ed. You're gonna have to sort your team out, making us look bad. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, look, if we look at what's Chelsea's main weakness, it is up front. Because at the moment they're starting with Giroud, who's one of these defensive centre forwards who doesn't actually score goals.
I mean, we conceded 2 goals to Newcastle, right?
Yeah, well, it reminds me of days of like Emil Heskey, where people talk about strikers who are not actually there to score.
Yeah, he's just there for Hazard to play off, I guess.
Yeah, and Morata as well. It was a massive signing from last year. If you remember, there was big discussions, and we had it on the pod as well. People saying, "Oh, should we have bought Morata? Should we have bought Lukaku?" And he actually had a good start to his career. But I think then he's falling off completely. And I think it was pretty clear that Lukaku had a much better season. And in fact, for Morata now to be playing second fiddle to Giroud, who's come all the way from being third choice kind of striker at Arsenal to being first choice in the World Cup winning team and starting for Chelsea. So it's been.
I think you're doing a bit of a disservice, to be honest. I rate Giroud. I think he's a really good forward.
He does that job.
It depends what you mean.
Exactly. He does do a job for the team, but he doesn't score any goals. Like in the World Cup, he didn't even have one shot on target.
Or something, right?
Exactly, in the whole bloody tournament. But maybe he's not there for that. And in fact, I was having a quick look around. If you look at Chelsea's kind of average position teams, Alonso is actually mostly further forward than Giroud, and he's got at least Hazard and William or whatever in front of him as well. So he's not actually anywhere near being their most forward player.
He's just a pivot for them to work off, I think.
Exactly.
And that's fine, if that's what working. And they're getting a tune even from the likes of Barkley.
Yeah, he's been rejuvenated back in the England squad.
From what I can tell, they just seem to 1-2 it up the pitch. They just 1-2 constantly, just 1-2 up the pitch, and until Hazard gets it and runs at a few defenders and scores and finesses it into the corner.
But like you say, it really is amazing how quickly they've managed to get that rhythm layer. We talk about Mourinho saying, he needed 1 year, 2 years, now 3 years to kind of build and do it. Whereas
same with Van Gaal, right? 3 years to implement his philosophy.
Well, exactly. Yeah, we say we shouldn't expect anything too quickly, but then Conte comes in when the league in his first season. Sarri's turned up, and maybe that is because they've got a structure in the background which allows managers to come in and just do their thing without worrying too much of what's going in the back. I don't know. Like I say, I'm not an expert on how Chelsea are set up in the back, but that's something I would assume. But I'm thinking that I don't know if it's part of the bus time. We've not really particularly seen us do that yet this year, but I wouldn't be surprised for us to revert to that. And to be honest, I'd almost say it's probably our best game plan in this game to go and get any kind of result there.
Do you think the fans stick with Mourinho with him parking the bus, or is it purely results driven?
I think in this game, people will probably accept it if we come out. If we win, of course you'll accept it. If we get a draw, you're probably okay. The problem, of course, comes when you park the bus and don't get a result. The problem last year was when we were playing well, I remember, and it all went to that Liverpool game. We started the season really well, 4 goals here, 4 goals there. All of a sudden go to Anfield and just surrender the match. That's when people had an issue with it. This year, when we're not playing that well, if there's a problem, whatever, then I think you probably accept that, all right, we're going to have to go play defensive and hope we can nick one somewhere.
We'll have big Phil Jones, man marking Hazard.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think he's available.
I think he's got to bring Herrera or Fred back in, right? Or it'll probably be Fellaini actually. But he's got to do something here. I don't know, but I mean, how do we set up and what's the game plan? Just park the bus and try and man mark Hazard? What You know, do we think Martial or Sanchez plays? Both plays, Sanchez on the right, Martial on the left. Does it matter? Will we have any attacking intent?
Pack the midfield and use the width.
Yeah, we'll still have chances. You know, we've got to make the most of our counter when we get those chances. I would like to see Sanchez on the right, Martial on the left, which is what we all hoped we would see from when Sanchez first came up. And for some reason, it's taken 6 months for Mourinho to work out that maybe that is the best way forward.
Nick, what do you think the score will be?
A draw, 0-0. It will be 0-0. We're going to defend,
Really?
and it's going to be 0-0.
Arguably the informed team this year, right? Chelsea, and you think you don't think we'll concede with our defence how it is right now?
No, because I think we're going to just play super defensively. I think that's the way he's going to go, and I think maybe if he does play that super defensive system, we'll keep him out. But yeah, I don't see us scoring there if we play that way.
Fair enough. It's going to be interesting for sure. Not sure how much I'm looking forward to it, but following on from that game, a game that at the start of the season I was incredibly excited for, and then now I'm somewhat, well, I don't know if I'm excited or dreading it or what right now, but following the Chelsea game, we've then got Juventus at home. The return of a big Champions League game against, true Champions League, top European pedigree, which is what the Champions League's about. Seen some fantastic players and the return of Ronaldo.
Yeah, I've actually messed up big time for this game.
You're not going?
Well, yeah, like I said, totally messed up. I allowed my wife to book a holiday before the Champions League draw, and then realised that I'm actually only just flying back that day, so I won't miss the game, but I'm not going to be able to make it to the match, unfortunately. So yeah, messed up there. But I'll be watching it, but I won't be at Old Trafford, unfortunately. So yeah, kicking myself over that one.
You looking forward to it though?
Yeah, of course. Like I say, these are the matches we want. We didn't get that really big match last year. We had a relatively easy draw, and I want to see these games. These are the games we want to see at Old Trafford. Let's see what kind of reception Ronaldo gets, and
I hope not a good one.
He will get a good reception.
He got a great reception when he came back with Madrid.
He will get a good reception.
Yeah, but he shouldn't.
Why not?
Based upon the allegations ongoing, I think.
Well, I don't even really want to talk about that. That's all just rumor bullshit at the moment.
Well, I mean, obviously, we should hear out allegations and a proper process should go through, but we, obviously there's no point in us speculating, although I did find it weird that Juventus, I don't know if it was a tweet or what, but I think they basically were saying that he's this great sporting champion. Like that extrapolated means that he can't have done such an act, which is just absolutely ridiculous considering some of the celeb stories from the last few years. But anyway, obviously Ronaldo will be returning, and the impact he's had commercial on Juventus has been crazy. I don't know if you saw, but I think their share price has doubled. It's gone up 100% since Ronaldo joined.
Right.
It's absolutely unbelievable the impact that just him being there has had, and they've played 10-1-10 this season.
Undefeated so far.
Undefeated, but they haven't drawn a game, right? They've won all of them now.
Yeah.
Go on, tell us a bit more about their form, Ed.
Top scorers: Ronaldo, Mandzukic, Dybala, all scoring 4 goals each.
Poor numbers there for Ronaldo, right?
Yeah.
Ronaldo.
but then they've bought him he's not been playing. I don't think he's been playing in the league as much. I think they've bought him specifically for the Champions League.
I think he's played. I think he's played he's played every game.
Oh, is he?
I don't think he started this season. I think he did. Yeah, I don't think he started the season, but he has played.
I think it just took him a while to score, but he was getting a lot of assists and man of the matches. I thought it took him like 4 or 5 games to score, but he'd been man of the match in all of them. Or so. Hard to know. I don't know if that's a fan voted man of the match or I don't know. Who knows whether he deserved them or not? But
last 4 games, they've had 2-0 against Udinese, 3-0 against Young Boys, 3-1 against Napoli, 2-0 against Bologna.
What was the score against Valencia?
Bologna. Oh, have they played Valencia?
Yeah, they must have, because we played Young Boys.
Oh, of course. I can't remember now. I think they battered them. possibly.
The team we drew 0-0 with.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Oh yeah, no,
Let's
because
have a look. 2-0 with the Ronaldo red card early
yeah,
on.
yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, well, that was the question mark on whether Ronaldo was going to play in this game, right? But he is.
But
going
he
to.
is.
and they've got a
Yeah.
comparatively easy game before they play us.
Who are they playing?
Genoa, 11th.
All right.
They're 11th in Serie A. So.
In fairness, almost any game is an easy game for
Yeah, all
Juventus
right.
in the
Whereas
league.
we've got
Yeah,
Chelsea.
yeah. But on the positives, we've won 5 against them and lost 5 and drawn 2. And the last 3 times we've played them, we've won. So obviously,
Last three times, go on.
last two times we played them competitively, we've beaten them.
Yeah, and I think we were remembering that the last time we actually played them was Gary Neville's testimonial, right? 2011. I was there. I think Ed, you said you were there as well, right?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I was in Family Stand, I think.
I actually didn't remember the game at all. I only went to that match because Ian Brown was singing pre-game live, coming to sing "This Is the One," and that was the only reason I even went to that game because I've always been a person who thinks testimonials are a waste of time. But I did go to Gary Neville's testimonial just to see Ian Brown sing on the pitch at Old Trafford.
The one thing I can remember from, well, 2 things is the Del Piero standing ovation, and I can remember Lindegaard passing specifically to Gary Neville because it was his testimonial, and getting Gary Neville into a bit of trouble. And
I remember as well it being like a weirdly scheduled game because it was like 4 or 5 days before the Champions League final. And Juventus played a kind of full team, whereas ours was more Gary's mate. The whole class of '92 played, and I think only a couple of our first teamers were in there. So I think we got beat, didn't we? But anyway, it was like I say, it wasn't really about the result that day.
No, I think the 2 games before that were the was it a 2-1 and a 3-0 away at Juventus, and that was the last time we met them in the group stage, right? So from memory, it was 2003. It was the year the final was at Old Trafford, and we battered them in the group stage 3-0 away from home at their place, and won 2-1 at Old Trafford. We topped our group. They went through, I believe, on goal difference, back when it was a goal difference system, but then ended up being the ones in the final at Old Trafford later in the year. Obviously, they didn't win it. They lost to Milan on penalties. But
awful final, right? 0-0.
Yeah, awful final 0-0, went to penalties, and Milan won. And I'm guessing the time before that was the
One night in
99 semi-final, was it?
Yeah.
The Roy Keane inspired 3-2 win.
Yeah.
Right.
Away.
Sure. So some good history there. None of it relevant.
No, none of it relevant anymore.
Interesting, all the same.
In the 90s, they were sort of the team to beat. And I think, and that's sort of why Gary Neville had them at his testimonial, because there was that big rivalry between Manchester United and Juventus in Europe.
Definitely, but it's the home. We've got to get something out of this game, right?
Yeah, well,
we've dropped points to Valencia. Surely we've got to get something out of this game.
Well, or if we think they're going to beat them, they've already beaten Valencia, right? Otherwise it means we have to go and get a result away at Valencia, I suppose.
Which we can do, he says. But it's the kind of game you want to win, though.
Well, every game is the type of game you want to win.
Again, I'll be pretty happy with a draw.
They're a lot better than us right now. They've got much better players. They're in much better form. I'm sure they'll be up for it, and if we can get something, I'll be very surprised. And obviously, that's typically I've been one of those people who would back us to win whatever.
And this is actually the really crazy thing when you talk about, there is still discussion about. I've seen a big thread on Red Cafe this week where people are talking about, have we really invested enough in our team? And people start looking at going back 10 years and talking about, based on inflation, we've not really, and this and that. But whatever way you look at it, we're spending a lot more on our squad at the moment than Juventus. Even though they've bought Ronaldo and whatever wages they're paying him, our wage bill is still way higher than Juventus's. And look at what we're getting for that compared to what they're getting for it. That's when you just see that, there's no comparison in who's getting better value for money.
Yeah, we've bounced from manager to manager with no continuity or continued style or continued approach or continued profile of player in that. When Mourinho come in, how many of Van Gaal's signings actually continued with us and were successful? How many of Mourinho's own signings have been successful for him as well? And just a complete lack of continuity and identification of the right player at the right time in the right context for us, but instead just bouncing not just from manager to manager, but player who we believe can be marketable to next. In positions we don't need, like Sanchez, and ignoring the areas that really need strengthening, right? And it's it set us up to be in the position we're in, and yeah, it's not good enough and needs changing. But yeah, we spoke about that at length in this podcast. But yeah, I guess so. Yeah, quickly predictions on this Juventus game,
2-1 United.
and that's what you reckon.
I'll be happy with a draw.
You'll be happy with a draw, Nick. But is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
0-0, 1-1, 2-2, 5-5.
Never been bothered about score predictions, whatever. It'll be a draw. That's all you're getting out of me.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So, an edge you're going for a win.
2-1. Yeah.
All right, you're feeling confident. I remember when the draw came out, you said, "Oh, we're destined for the Europa League."
Yeah.
So you've changed your tune now, yeah?
Well,
feeling confident.
You can never discount the Europa League, but let's go for a 2-1 win.
Shouldn't forget as well that it's a big match for Pogba.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, let's see. We haven't actually talked about the fact that despite all the criticism and apparent fallout between Mourinho and Pogba is actually having an amazing season.
He's having a patchy season.
I don't think. I think virtually in every game he's been one of our. He's our best outfield player
Pulled
this year.
off at West Ham 60 minutes in.
That says more about our outfield than it does about Paul Pogba's performances so far this season. He's had some brilliant games, some good games, and then some absolute dire games.
I mean, there's only one game where he was really bad.
No, terrible against Brighton, poor against Wolves, other than that flick for the goal, poor against West Ham. Like, I agree with Ed, it's been very up and down, but better than most players even so.
No, he's been our... is there anyone else who's in contention of being our best?
Luke Shaw?
All right, yeah. I'd say it's between those two pretty much, yeah.
Fellaini, more consistent perhaps.
Yeah, he's not played that much compared to the other two.
In terms of ability, yeah, Paul Pogba is probably our best outfield player, but he's not showed it in every game.
No, I'm not talking about ability. I'm talking about how he's actually performed this year, and I think he's done really well.
Yeah, he's had some good games, but I think he has had some bad games too. But it's difficult in how the team's playing right now that he's not in a position where he can just... He's not someone who's up front and could just score a goal out of nothing and win the game for us. He's not really that sort of player. So he's limited in how much influence he can have when the rest of the team aren't putting the effort in, which is, in fairness, what I think we probably saw at West Ham.
Well, his influence is making the chances, right?
Yeah, but if Lukaku's not running and people aren't moving, and you've seen him in games waving his arms, moaning about why no one's moving or coming to the ball, or there's nothing to play to, and he ends up turning it around and kicking it backwards in frustration.
Yeah, but that's not his fault then, is it?
No, it's not. But that's what I'm saying. He's limited in what he can do because of how the team's performing. But anyway, it's been a long podcast, but obviously we had a lot to discuss and to catch up on. But I think that's everything for tonight, unless you guys have anything to add.
No, yeah.
Sponsors on Patreon.
Yeah, do check that out. Patreon.com/United Hour.
Please do. We could use a bit of help, and if you want to keep hearing us moaning, then please do back us, and there's some rewards on there as well for people who do.
Yeah.
Getting access to the WhatsApp group being
the ramblings of a madman.
The most sought after of all. Yeah, awesome. So thank you very much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Get on that Patreon page, and cheers everyone. We'll be back after the Juventus game, no doubt. Cheerio.
Good night.
Good night.